I think now we are great. Okay, so I will, we are all done with the socials. I think we are good to go with our webinar for today. So before I go ahead and actually talk about you in specific or the company that you work for, Anusha, I wanted to ask a specific question. How are we doing on a Saturday morning?
Oh, wow, wonderful. I was very much looking forward for this session.
Yeah.
And last couple of weekends have been crazy because of things at work.
Uh-huh.
But today, yeah, it's a beautiful day and I look forward for this session.
Awesome. So actually, even I was quite excited, like I said earlier, because I think rarely you get to talk to a brand that is so much invested in customers' experience, and for the brand that has been for decade. I mean, it takes a lot of energy to keep up with the trends of how customer keeps behaving over all these years, right? So on that note, I think I wanted to introduce the company that you work for currently. It's none other than Lifestyle International Private Limited. It is one of the leading and recognized retail companies in the entire country. Lifestyle actually was started in the year 1999 as the company is a part of a multi-billion dollar Dubai-based retail and hospitality conglomerate Landmark Group. Under Landmark, we currently see there are many, many other brands that we come in touch with daily, and we enjoy shopping on our day-to-day needs and day-to-day lifestyle requirements. Based on all of it, I think Lifestyle is all about being relevant and youthful and providing a unique shopping experience to their customers over the past decade. So under this Lifestyle, we have launched, or they have launched, a unique loyalty program called the Lifestyle Edge. It is a differential rewards program for the most valuable customers of the Lifestyle. Anusha, could you try help me understand a little bit about the concept of this loyalty program and why is it anything different like any other loyalty program?
Sure. So when we conceptualize the program Lifestyle Edge, right? See, what we wanted to do is, solve certain problems that the customers are having, or more to do with think a little bit forward and then try to, simplify the journey that the customer is having at our stores. So initially, when we started more of it as a store-led program, but then during these COVID times, etc., we've kind of moved it forward, even extended the journey to online as well. So primarily, if I need to speak about the program, it has some value-based benefits and also experience-based benefits. So a couple of things, if you are an ardent customer who shop at Lifestyle, couple of issues that you may face is, during festive time or during sale time, you are standing at the counter and you need to stand in the line for some time, wait for your turn, right? So what we've done is we wanted to give a priority billing counter for these kind of customers. Apart from that, also we've heard, for quite some times during a couple of our surveys and market research that parking benefits is something that the customer really looks forward. So when I'm coming for the shopping, why not reward me back for the kind of shopping? If I'm shopping at your place, why not reward me back? Apart from that, a lot of customers look for instant gratification. Any program would be successful only when the customer would be able to get instantly gratified, right? So we've done couple these benefits, like birthday benefits. In your birthday month you get an additional 20% off. And we've also made it a point that because we are serving the most loyal customer base, why not tie up with brands who trade at our stores, and also brands who would like to partner and give them surprise offers. So whenever a customer comes to the store, we identify customer basis a mobile number. You just have to take your phone, scan a talker. There are multiple talkers in the store. You scan the talker, QR code based talker, and we identify that this customer is an edge customer, and we give surprise benefits. Let's say you shop a lot of Ginger, right? Ginger is a brand that we trade. Then you get an additional discount on Ginger. Or let's say there are 10 participating brands, you get an additional 20% cash back or 10% cash back. So the offers keep varying month on month. We try to be as much as relevant as possible to these customers, right? So it works two ways. We are trying to make the best out of the customers who are extremely loyal to us, as well as give the best out of us to those customers who really value us.
Mm-hmm.
So Lifestyle Edge is like a baby. We've nurtured it all along, and here we are. It is one of our most strategic projects and programs that we have for our customers.
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree with you on the aspect of trying to provide something that the customers love, benefit, and enjoy the most. And at the same time, convenience is something that every day in this day
Right.
and age want, right? And I think that way you'll have nailed the benefits. When I was going through it and I was shopping online for lifestyle itself, I've had such a great time understanding, okay, these are the things which we don't quite notice, but at the same time, when relieved from these pains, right, it makes us feel a little bit better about the brand. And that's exactly what I want to be treated as somebody who's a king as I am. And then that way I think the rewards program is definitely a good one. So on that note, I wanted to understand, how has the response been? How are people talking about it? What is the feedback so far?
In fact, it's been great. So, in terms of, when we do a lot of surveys, or we even try and understand from our net promoter scores, we see great responses from customers, and a lot of them come back to us and say, we would like to renew the membership. So it's an annual membership program.
Mhm.
And, during our surveys also, there are, we would always like to evaluate our program and try to stay more relevant, right? So people have come back saying, you know what, during my birthday, in spite of being sale, I got an additional discount on top of the existing discounts that are running at the store. Or,
Mhm.
I am treated differently whenever I'm there. Whenever people identify on the floor that I'm an Edge customer, people give extra attention, right? So it's about making the customer feel that extra special, and making that journey and experience really good, right? I feel good at lifestyle, I would like to take it back home, that experience.
Mhm.
So far the experience has been good, and even during COVID times we've gone ahead and extended the membership for a good 90 days.
Mhm.
And we try and make it a point to keep improving our program by listening to customers.
Oh, that's absolutely great. I think there I also had a thought in terms of, yes, the customer definitely does feel amazing when they're at store and they're the Edge members and they get treated differently. But at the same time, the brand is also able to identify the cream layer of the customer who actually go out of their way to be part of a brand and their day-to-day lifestyle, and want to be recognized with the brand, right? So it's a win-win for both the customer and for the brand.
Right.
So I think in this manner, I did wanted to ask. So for in order to launch the rewards program or the Edge rewards program, there's a lot of data that you have worked with, right? There's
Right.
something that you wanted to understand and wanted to do. So coming back to the fundamental question before we go ahead with the topic is, in your so far activity of 2020, the entire year of 2020, have you seen a brand that used their customer data in such a way that you are absolutely impressed?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of brands who have done a brilliant job. There are brands who've done good jobs, but not consistently. But there's probably one brand that, I personally admire in terms of communication.
Mhm.
Zomato is one such a brand where, they try to keep up to people's expectation and try to stay relevant, right? It's been so long since you've ordered during the lockdown. It's been 7 months, and are your parents really bothered about ordering? Then these are the couple of things that you can do. This is safe, etc. Basically, they're trying to be cool, also trying to emphasize that we are safe,
Mhm.
and consistently staying relevant, saying that, let's say I love biryani, then they say that your favorite biryani is waiting for you, or
Yeah,
things like that, right?
yeah.
Wherein you don't need to do hyper personalization these days, because people think that, I really need to talk to customer one on one. But
Mhm.
if you're trying to stay relevant, sometimes even, mass customization is good.
Mhm.
It's raining, then speak to them about weather. It's cricket season, speak to them about IPL. Whatever connects to the customer, make those cohorts and talk to them, people, and stay consistent. That's important, because I remember, during the first 21 days of lockdown, a lot of brands started with things like everyday date, 7 day, 8 day, 9. After that, they did not stay relevant anymore, right? So
Mhm.
it's consistency which is critical. And yeah, Zomato is one of the brand who tried to stay consistently cool.
Yeah. So I think I absolutely agree with you. I was really impressed with the recent email that they've sent, the mail trail of the meme team.
Yeah.
They were able to nail the fact with the customer data, how many times were customer able to order a particular dish as mundane data, right? Like ordering particular dish or a particular customer ordered these many times, avail this much cashback. I think these in a general data sense, they do sound mundane for any business, right? But on a customer perception, if you put it out in a very wonderful way of communication, like you said, it's been 7 months, are your parents really bothering you, or are they worried about the health of the food? So I think it's the way they communicate, right? So does it have to do with a lot of customer segmentation being one of the major things that will help them send mass personalization?
So, so a lot of data is not explicitly given by customer, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as, I'll just take the example of, let's say a customer is coming for the first time to Lifestyle. There are multiple variables that we capture, right? How much is the customer spending? What categories the customer buying? How many garments the customer picked? What kind of product, make, brand, which season the customer is buying? Is it during a sale? What discount? So there are multiple things that an organization can capture. The customer just might give a mobile number, but there's so much more data that is available with us that we can talk to customer really well. So let's say there's Sankranti period. I can just do a simple communication saying that it's Sankranti time. It's that time of the year that, you want to bring in festivities home. Why don't you buy for the family? You always buy for Sankranti, or, simple things like this. Or even when you start a new year, simply give a customer journey saying that, this is your shopping journey. You would like to shop at our, stores at between, let's say 11 to 3 p.m. and you've shopped so many times, you like these brands, these are the colors. So these are things which the customer may or may not be aware of, right? Inherently you would know that, okay, these are my top 3-4 consideration sets. But when you talk to customer like this, right, people really appreciate. So not just about communication. So even let's say I have an issue, I want to return the product. Then somebody at the call center, as simple as not asking too many questions, right? Saying that, yes, I know these things about you. Yes, I know these are the sizes that you bought in the past, and this seems to be a misfit. So I don't even need to ask, saying that, what is the reason for your return? So as simple as, if you stitch a journey like that, it is really good for the customer. Okay. So sometimes you have to talk about these. Sometimes you don't even have to talk, like simple things like, basis your purchase pattern. These are the recommended products. So people, people who bought this product also bought that product, or they say you're the top 10% of the early adopters, or simple things like that. People who can understand that language, if you can talk to them like that,
I think they'll catch on. The late majority, everybody will be able to catch up with. Once the early adopters sink in with everything that we are offering them, I think rest is history. Like everything is taken care of very well, right? Because I think they are the ones who contribute to the major segment of the current market. I think if we take care of their needs, everybody else slowly falls into place. They do understand how things go.
Sure.
So on that note, I wanted to bring this one fundamental challenge every brand goes through is, right, at the bottom level, is to collect the right data at the right time. So that for example, for Edge Rewards, right, it's a mobile number that is very important to identify the customer. But oftentimes they're not. You're at the store POS, whoever is working over there, they end up collecting data which doesn't make sense, the names or the phone numbers. So then the data gets mapped wrongly to the wrong customer. So how can we mitigate this issue by letting the brand know the importance of data building?
Yeah, I think data quality is very critical, because if you get the data wrong and communicate to the customer wrongly, it creates a lot of irritation, right? I still remember, I don't want to quote the name of the rewards program, but I'm always addressed as Zenith. So whenever that mail comes with the name Zenith, I'm like, oh God, it really creates that, sense of irritation that you would never want to be associated with that brand, right? So it's very important. Data quality is very important, and you should try and collect as minimal as data as possible and collect it in the right manner. Even if it is simple thing like name and mobile number, these are the only 2 things that are required. Rest all, even if the customer doesn't, give it proactively, there is a lot more that you can do. So whatever little you collect, it is very critical to have these systems in place in a right manner. So that's why a lot of people these days have dual POS, wherein the customer itself keys in the data. And also, if you know for a fact that there's a constant improvement for you to improvise the data, you will have to constantly keep talking to the customer through various platforms, either through sending a simple SMS saying that, would you like to correct your information? Whenever a customer comes to the store, right? Would you like to correct your information? These are the details. Let's say, as simple as for Lifestyle Edge program, there's one of the biggest benefits is giving birthday benefits. So if the customer's birthday is not even captured, one of the critical benefit is even not being utilized by the customer, right? So it's a constant thing that we need to reach out to these customers to get the birthdays right, etc. Also, there are other things which are critical. When you open up for these corrections, etc., there are a lot more repercussions. Like there are people who could, give multiple birthdays, etc. So you also need to have strong database management systems, or those you need to have floodgates where people will not abuse the system, right?
Yes.
So yes, customer is the king. We need to cater to customer requirement, but you also need to have a strong system which can mitigate any losses for the organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think on that note, I do have a question for you, since you have 13 plus years of career expertise in entire loyalty and the customer acquisition cycles, right? What is the biggest change that you've noticed from past decade in terms of how data is captured versus how it's treated?
Yeah. So I think, let's say a decade back, if I need to talk to the customer about, let's say, I really want to do a simple cross sell or an upsell. I really need to do rule-based programs, right? Saying that, okay, I have some 10 services. I would like to offer these services to the customer. What are the 3 best fits, right? So you literally have to treat the data in such a manner that, okay, I give priority or weightage for these things. And depending on the customer's number of visits or usage or average bill value or average latencies, etc., we would build rule-based programs. And campaigns used to be run in a very manual fashion or with a periodic refresh. So nothing was real time. So it's more like every 15 days I would do a refresh, or depending on the bandwidths people have or the kind of systems people would have, it was fairly like that. But right now we have beautiful tools, data management tools and SaaS tools where you can build predictive models, and these are not models that you get, put rule based. You can just key in input saying that, okay, these are my critical variables, or depending on past data, they would only throw saying that these are the top critical variables in through which you can build these models. A lot of tools also have these out of the box solutions which you can readily use. So all you have to do is you need to be clear about what's your objective. Let's say retention is my objective. Then create a hand-holding plan wherein you create those milestones and say, okay, if the customer is not hitting this milestone, trigger this campaign. As simple as it is, right? So automation is at its highest peak in the last decade. People are relying on a lot of machine learning. And so it's been much simpler, right? It's actually making the best use of data to make it in a very simplified manner, have these simple 4-5 predictive models, use them, talk to the customer, stay more relevant, do more hyper personalization. A decade back, you can't even think of, talking one-on-one, right? You would only know that, okay, I want to pitch so-and-so service to customer. See who are all the customers who are most probable, who are in the top decile, right? Today, we don't have to do that. You know that for one customer, what is more relevant pitch to that customer. So a lot has changed in the last decade.
Absolutely. I think I've been part of that. I've been the customer who's moved from that, where I used to see a lot of hoardings or a lot of very mass media advertisements, although now they still are continuing. But then that coupled with hyper-personalization of, hey Mitra, it's been a while, we have missed you, and we see that you love a certain cup of coffee. How about it's on us? I think such kind of things definitely trigger a very, oh, they care about me. Or in a way, it puts you in a position where you're treated in a very nicer way. I think that has definitely been on a good side for me as a customer. I've been enjoying it. But for brands, when it comes to brands and customer data, right, Anusha, I always have this question, and even I face it on a general day-to-day basis, is I have piling amounts of data. It's maybe thousands, 10,000s, a lakh, or maybe more than that, right? And there are different fields, from phone numbers, names, what did they purchase, when did they purchase, and etc. A lot of patterns. And if it's an online, then you have a lot of events that get created within the website. So for a brand, how do they make sense of a lot of this data, right? How do they make any meaning out of this data?
So couple of things. See, there are two ways to look at it. One is looking at making sense of the data. And second thing is, even if you make sense of the data, what is the best channel to communicate to the customer? So making best sense of the data, here you need to be very clear about the objectives, right? So it's as simple as, there is a customer who's come for the first time. How do I know when the customer is going to come back, right? So here I may not even just work with the customer data of the customer who's come for the first time. I have past history of multiple customers who have shown a similar behavior. And I can do a simple lookalike saying that, okay, this customer has purchased two, women's Western wear and has only spent, let's say, $1,200. So this kind of a customer, what are the chances for the customer to come back and when the customer is going to come back? Right? It's as simple as it is. So if you have objectives very clear, saying that, let's say my objective is to reduce first time churn, or my objective is to win back a customer who's been transacting with me for quite some time, then you can use these platforms which can crunch data and give you these solutions. So there are ready-made out-of-the-box solutions. There are certain tools like SaaS tools, your statistical tools like R and Python, etc., where if there are good knowledge-based employees that you have, you can build great tools which can help you make sense out of the data. The second point is, even after you make sense out of the data, if you need to communicate, which is the best medium. So today, a lot of us have moved from one platform to another. Like earlier, people used to look in SMS for coupons. Now, emailers, a lot of spam rates has increased. Now people are browsing more on Instagram. So how do I keep the customer engaged on that medium? So whatever is the most preferred medium, try to communicate to the customer there. And also over the years, even at Lifestyle, we've tried building these communication platforms which are unique. Like when the customer is in store, right? That's the best time to talk to customer. So how do we talk to customers? So we've built a platform called Buddy, wherein you can talk to the customer real time. You can pitch an offer to the customer real time and tell that, you know what, this has been your past purchase behavior. This is the right fitment for you. This is the offer that I can give you for this brand, or at an X value, right? That is when the customer feels really, instantly gratified, saying that I'm at Lifestyle, I've got a great offer. Yes, why not use it? So this is what is very critical, making sense of data and also pitching to the customer in the right manner, in the right place and the right time, and using the right medium.
So absolutely, I think that's one of the dream of any business, in fact, that they target the right customer at the right place at the right time. We've definitely seen the kind of images or the kind of videos that pop up, right? Like a customer is shopping at the store and suddenly discount at the product that they're currently looking at. I think that is dream of every brand, and the dream of all so and so times they're really interested in your brand. This is how they like to be communicated. The problem comes is customer is always volatile, although they're predictable, but they're a little bit volatile. In your opinion, I have two parts of the same question. A, how do you handle volatility, customer behavior volatility?
See, I wouldn't say customer behavior is extremely volatile. It relatively has been volatile if you compare from a last 1 decade. The behaviors used to change 3 to 4 years, but now the behavior changes in 6 months to 1 year. People don't just randomly stop buying a brand. They show certain signs, right? At least people who are loyal to your brand don't just suddenly stop shopping with your brand until and unless something drastic happens, like they've had a real bad experience. And then even if they have a real bad experience, they try to convey in some or other fashion, like rating you bad or giving these reviews, etc. So how do we handle these? So these extreme behaviors you will have to handle one-on-one. But these behaviors where customer is gradually moving out of the brand or gradually upgrading into your brand, these are places where you need to do a lot of work in terms of creating these cohorts. Who is upgrading, who is downgrading, whose behavior. You will have to make these multiple cohorts where, let's say, a customer is a price sensitive customer, is no longer a price sensitive customer. Let's say a customer buys always below 800 rupees, now is moved to 1300. Now, what do I do with these customers? Make these nice milestone based handholding plans, which can actually help predict the behavior of the customer, maybe not on a one-on-one level, but at a cohort level, you will be able to predict the customer behavior. And in times like, let's say, COVID is something that nobody has predicted, right? Has happened. Now, how do we cope up with that behavior? Now, have strong systems. This is the best time where a lot of people have been extremely innovative. In fact, I've also not seen in our organization being so innovative and come up with products which makes a lot of sense during, even if it is for a short period of time. You need to stay relevant. You can't keep using your old communication methodologies or saying that, we are on sale. It doesn't work anymore, right? You need to assure your customers that, safety is first. We have spick and span. You come, we'll treat you differently. We have different slots for you. We'll let's say for edge customers, we have started free online shipping. So it's not just that you're expecting an outcome of a customer, but also how fastly you can build your systems or upgrade your systems during current times. Yes, volatility is at its peak in the last 1 year, but I wouldn't say, customers don't show signs before moving out of your brand. So it's important, at least at a cohort level, keep tracking these changes, maybe not at a one-on-one level, but yeah.
But I think when you mention innovation, right, I think Lifestyle is definitely one among them who's been a little innovative in the past 1 year, where the COVID was going completely berserk in the world. That was, I think, we've noticed the mobile fashion experience is where Lifestyle launched its mobile shopping experience on every street, wherever they could go. And it was beautifully designed, right? Like the entire banners of the entire truck was branded with Lifestyle. But when a customer enters the area, it's like they're entering the actual store. So we are trying to not only reconnect the customer back into their original form, that is the entire look and feel of how Lifestyle is all about. But at the end of the day, also assuring the customer, saying, hey, we understand that there's a lot of uncertainty going on. How about we make one less thing for you to worry about by getting the fashion right at your doorstep. Right. So I think that was something that intrigued me, because I think is you go as a group, like your entire family comes out of the house, wants to experience it together, that you're building a very good experience for the customer and their family members. And B is you're drawing eyeballs, like you're drawing such innovative attention to the brand, and that's something which you want to stand out with, right? What do you do differently in order to connect to your customer on a deeper level, right?
Right.
On that note, I have another question in terms of, okay, now we have unlocked the reasons and how the customer behaves, and we know why they behave in a certain way. How do we create a valuable loyalty program then? What is the one giveaway or the good trait every brand should have to create value with their loyalty program with the customer data that they have?
So I think what I feel, this is my personal view, what is important for a loyalty program is not just to understand or collect data from the customer, but how do we make it convenient to the customer? How do we ensure it's value giving to the customer? And how do we stay relevant? So these are the three things I think are very critical to design any loyalty program. And also for any loyalty program to be successful, or to even evaluate, does a brand need a loyalty program or not. There are a lot of brands in the market who do not have any loyalty programs, but what they believe is, my product speaks for itself. I don't need any loyalty programs to build loyalty. So I would say it's a good approach if the brand is really strong and do not have any competitors in the market, but it's no longer relevant according to me, because you are not just driving the product, you're also driving the experience. And how do you stay relevant is by knowing what the customer is doing, and even when the customer is at home, right? So when the customer is not interacting with you directly, how can you keep engaged with the customer? Because what you see is what you feel connected with. So if I don't visit a mall, so current times, like, people did not step out for a long period, like 5-6 months, people did not step out. So how do you be on top of the customer's mind and still stay relevant? If you do not have loyalty programs, I don't think that would happen, right? So what's important for any loyalty program is, first of all, understand what is the objective. Are you trying to just keep engaged with the customer, or are you trying to drive certain business objectives? Like, I know for a fact that anybody who steps into my store, let's say 70% of them don't come back. So that's a problem that I have, right? I need to address that. So how do I address that? Until and unless I stay connected and, give these benefits to customer who can come back, we will not be able to stay updated. So if you have these problem statements at hand, or a vision saying that, what, I want to build a great brand where people can come back less and keep creating more value to the customer and keep making the customer buy more and more of services that I have, then we can build literally objectives. So a lot of these loyalty programs these days don't have any more these points, right?
Yeah.
So the traditional loyalty programs started with points. The recent loyalty programs are more into instant gratification. And most of these value-based benefits, which are not just from your organization, but from your partner organizations, where the customers will be able to appreciate. Why not have that free membership when I'm part of, when I'm buying a lot from here, right? So that's the kind of, it's evolving. So there is no single, what do you call, a single approach. Whatever suits for your brand to stay relevant and make the customer's journey convenient, go ahead. Yeah.
Great. I absolutely agree on that. I think one of the brands that I did notice did that step was CultFit or CureFit. They were actually able to identify people, because of COVID, people were not able to come down, and they've launched their online classes. The best thing that they could do was the existing customers, whoever had a membership with CultFit, they were able to get a free membership up until December. I think that was the best move, considering by the time they open their centers, whoever has a membership with us can also utilize these amazing classes at free of cost. But the ones who are joining new, again, they get priced differently. But I think that giving that edge over your other customers makes you feel like, hey, you're part of something really great. And as it is, the brand has a great connect to their customers, and this just adds a cherry on top of the cake. So in this regard, right, like when we know the entire brand goal is to make the customer come the next time, right, and then the next time later, because the statistics say that a customer are 9 times more likely to convert when they're a repeat customer than somebody who's just a first-time customer, right? And it's easier, about 70 to 90%, to convince the customer saying, hey, take this, take that, if he's an existing customer versus a new one, right? So how do you build an engagement funnel? Like, how do you build a strategy that allows you to communicate to the customer at different levels?
So build basic KPIs, like, if it's a first time customer, right? The customer behaves in a certain fashion. Like I said, would have purchased for an X amount with an Y discount, purchased XYZ brands, and, come to the store during a heavy discounting season, etc. Right? So with this behavior, you can build lookalike models, and you already have certain existing customers who would have behaved like that in their first purchase, and then see which of these customers are most likely to come back. So the customers who are most likely to come back, who are in your top deciles, etc. You don't have to do much action other than just keeping them engaged with the current offerings that you have. For people who you know for a fact that have come during a discounting season and you're not prone to buy beyond a certain thing, then give them certain coupons or certain alliance benefits, etc. to connect with them and say that, you know what, you've purchased so and so brand at that time, now it is at Y discount, so why don't you come? So create those smaller occasions. And also the least responsive ones, right, are the ones who would react a lot during these big events. Like, you have a Republic Day sale going on, or you have a Black Friday sale going on. So these are times when these customers respond really well. So if you can segment your customers well, if you have a great predictive model which can say that, you know what, this customer may come in the next 4 months, may come in the next 6 months, then in the 6 months, what is it that there is an event for the customer to come back? Sometimes we even build these programs where you give a coupon upfront saying that, you know what, this is your first purchase. The next purchase, let's say 10% or 20% is on us, but you come only during this time, right? So that the customer, we also know, for example, typically, if a customer doesn't come back in 45 days, 80% of the customers, whoever repeat, come back in 45 days. So I know for a fact that if the customer doesn't come before this period, the customer 80% chances are that the customer would never come back. So why not create that window of opportunity wherein you ask the customer to come back? And I know for a fact that I'm spending a more from my margin, but however, it's worth it, because like you said, a repeat customer is much more valuable. So even if I make that customer repeat once more, the customer gets familiar with the brand, gets more comfortable, and buys more in the next coming purchases. Right?
Is it only for is it for all customers? So for example, for brand, if I have a 10,000 customer base and I want to target people who have not come for the past 45 days, so would I look at what is my main criteria or a giveaway for me to run a campaign with them? Would it be the bill size or the average order value? If they're more, yes, they're worth it, or how what do you look on that?
It'll be a combination of all the significant variables. So it works differently for different industries, right? For example, for a fashion retailer, it's as simple as, what is the value that the person purchased, and, what are the brands or what are the categories. Let's say somebody who's buying a watch. You can't expect the customer to come back in the next 45 days. But let's say somebody is buying a simple women's Western wear top. And I know there is a certain purchase cycle for this particular category, then you can pitch the customer. So the latencies differ for different categories. Or let's say I'm buying a beauty product, right? Or let's say I'm buying a lingerie, as simple as it is. So why should a person buying lingerie not buy ethnic wear or not buy Western wear? So these are instances where you can create. So there are multiple variables depending on what industry you are, etc. You can predict that this customer can come in 45 days, 90 days, etc., and pitch that coupon. So the period window of opportunity can differ for each customer. So for
in that case, while they're actually shopping, so let's say I'm at the store, right? How can brand identify my moment of joy, a customer's moment of joy, to run to talk to me in a way that will please me at some point to come back to you?
Yeah. So let's say I know that Mitra is a discount seeker, right? And likes, let's say, a brand called and she always buys and at 20% plus discount. And right now at the store, I'm not running any discount. And I know for a fact that she loves getting discounts. So why not give a 20%, which is only exclusive to Mitra, which is not applicable to any customer? That's the reason we've built this platform called Buddy, wherein you don't see the offer on the floor. But when you scan the QR code, we internally talks to the CRM system and knows that, okay, this is Mitra, this is a discount seeker, preferred brand is and only buys when it's at discount. Look at the current store discount, not on discount, give that. And then Mitra is the most happiest person now. She doesn't get the same discount when she steps out of the store and walks into a usual exclusive outlet of but would get it at Lifestyle. So why not? Why would Mitra not come and shop at Lifestyle, right?
Is Buddy being launched all across Lifestyle stores, or is it correct?
Yeah. We've launched it all across Lifestyle store. It's a good 2-year-old.
I think this is something which I definitely can relate, because now I think after our webinar, since it's a weekend, I can go down to Lifestyle. I wanted to interact, I can interact with. Otherwise, I think we stop. I think such kind of technology is absolutely needed, but not all customers are aware about it per se. I think they have to seek this special technology in order to actually feel rewarded when they're given that special reward. So I think definitely I will go to
so that makes the job even more tougher, right? Like, see, you know, this is a brilliant engagement tool, but on the floor, if you would look at the kind of people are on the floor, they would like to pitch their own products, own brands, etc. So in the clutter, it might even get lost. So that's also a very critical job for us, people like us, to make it more visible so that the customer feels special, right?
In that case, I think omni-channel is one of the concepts that comes into picture, where you try to connect your online customer to your offline technology and try to get them interact with an online tool and then take them back offline. So for our audience who don't know what an omni-channel loyalty program or in general omni-channel is, could you help them understand what it is all about?
Sure. See, you know, by the definition, it just says that, you know, just be there when the customer needs you. So a lot of people think that omni-channel means, you know, have a store, have an online presence, marry both, and that's it, done. But, you know, being omni-channel truly means as simple as I am at a lifestyle store. I'll just give an example of lifestyle. I'm at a lifestyle store. I really like a particular product where the size is not available, but I really want to buy it. Then, you know, why not scan it and then say that, you know, the same thing is available online, and I order it right away, and then in the next 1 or 2 days it comes back home. So this is one journey that we've explored and delivered, and we want to make it better. We want to say that why wait for 1 or 2 days? I ordered it now, it should come in the next 4 hours. So by the time I go back home, it should be delivered at my home. That's the expectation that the customer has, right? So it's not just about you know, being having just an online presence and saying that, you know what, even when you're at home, you can order. It's about stitching the entire journey and saying that, you know what, wherever you are, whether you're exploring through an e-commerce portal or you're comfortable, extremely comfortable on a platform like, let's say, WhatsApp, right? So I want to order on WhatsApp. I don't even want to go to an e-commerce site and get, you know, overwhelmed by the clutter. You know my behavior. Why not send me list of products that are more relevant for me over WhatsApp? And then I order on WhatsApp saying that, you know, okay, these are the top 10 recommendations. Would you like to explore? And then I see, and then there is an instant buy that happens, right? So stitching those journeys when the customer is in store, when the customer is at home, wherever the customer is. And it's not just about the channel, but it's also about being available. Let's say I browse a lot of Instagram. Then I want to see more of your trends, etc. on Instagram also, right? So being there on every platform where I am there, and talk to me where I connect better with. So that's what is very important. That's what I feel is true omni-channel.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that. I think because I personally, like I said, since I shop on a lifestyle online and also offline both, I as a customer go through it on a day-to-day basis. When if I'm on Instagram, I see certain, you know, trends and designs that are given to me or shown to me, and I love it because, and it's mostly based on my purchase history. It's not to do with anything out of the box and I'll feel awkward, no, but I think it's absolutely what I enjoy and want to shop with. So in that case, if I as a brand want to launch an omni-channel loyalty program, are there any rules that I have to consider in order to ensure like a tick box before I launch them?
So I think it purely depends on the brand. See, most of them either start as a separate wing. So when you have separate wings, you know, a lot of, you know, these business angles come into picture saying that, you know, when I launch the omni-channel benefits, how do I, you know, balance my my P&L? How do I ensure I you know, split the benefits, etc. But let's say you are launching as a brand who is present across, and you have a beautiful system where systems talk to each other brilliantly well. I think the benefits have to be truly omni-channel, but because as simple as I have my points, right, which I've accrued at the store. I have enough points, but I'm not getting the time to go to the store. So I want to, you know, redeem those points online. So if you don't create those channels where the customer can, you know, transact, then there's no point in calling it a omni-channel, right? You can accrue points at both the places, but you're not allowing the burn across. Then it will not help. So Yeah.
But I think in that case, right, you've actually brought in a point that somehow is so critical for every brand is systems speaking well with each other. Could you help shed a little bit of light on why it is important to have a tight-knit integrations from one system to another in order to make that customer experience seamless across?
Yeah, so it's very important because see, a lot of these brands have different systems. Like, let's say a simple thing like, your couponing system is different for your for your stores and for your online. The same coupon which is applicable online may not be redeemable. And couple of things like, gift cards, a lot of people face these issues because of some regulatory restrictions, wherein a card cannot be used at two different entities. So it needs to be a closed loop system, etc. So if you don't build systems which can talk to each other and resolve these guidelines or restrictions, then the customer feels constrained, right? I don't know. I can use my points, but not gift cards. I don't know. I can use a coupon, but not here. So customer gets confused, right? So at a point where the customer really wants to transact with you and is facing an issue, some people don't even tell that I have this concern. Some people at least reach out to the call center and we have solutions. But at that point in time, if you don't have strong systems which can talk each other and resolve that conflict, the customer feels dissatisfied and say, yeah, what omni-channel is? This is not omni-channel, right? I know that there is an XYZ.com and XYZ brand. They both don't talk to each other. It's just that there are two different places I can shop. So if you don't have brilliant systems, like simple things like couponing, gift cards, points, the journey of the customer will be broken.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree on you. I think, in fact, if I'm able to redeem the points online to offline, offline to online, I think as a brand, it also gives you a win because the redemption rate is absolutely higher, and your customers are being reached and spoken to in the right manner, and they're not getting lost in transaction or translation as such. So wanted to understand in your perspective, if we are talking about omni-channel loyalty program, integrations, like you said, systems should be very talking to each other is absolutely important. So there, in my personal opinion, I also believe that if the program is simple, your systems are integrated tightly, your program is automatically a success. So in that way, does it also start from building a loyalty program that has simple terms, terminologies, rules, or can we go as complex as we can and expect the customer to understand?
No, see, what happens is when you start a loyalty program, you don't build a complex one, you build a simple one.
Yeah.
But the technologies are evolving so much that you might want to partner with various partners which can make you stay more relevant. So something like as simple as a customer data platform is so much more relevant now, where you want to have a single view of the customer and talk to the customer in the same in a particular manner, right? It was not relevant like 5 years back. Right now it is so relevant that if you don't have it, you're so much losing, right? You are unnecessarily spending on multiple platforms where I know customer only responds on one platform, but I'm spending on 4 other platforms, right? So there you're not really orchestrating and communicating to customer. You're just in the blind communicating, saying that, okay, let's send an SMS, let's send an email, let's do social media targeting. You're not talking to the customer in a single fashion where I know social media is the right channel for the customer to talk to. SMS and email don't make any sense to this customer. So let's only talk in that medium. So so when you build a loyalty program, you wouldn't have these technologies in place, right? So you will have to slowly build it. And nobody wants to build a complex loyalty program. It so eventually happens that the technologies are so much more evolving, but you will have to think at least 2-3 years ahead and say, okay, this is a trend which is picking up. How do I address this trend? And how do I make the journey simpler? Because it doesn't matter how many systems in the backend you have. But to the customer should feel that, okay, when I'm talking to a call center agent, speaks the same language. When I'm talking on social media, speaks the same language. At the store, speaks the same language.
Yeah.
So the same language is very critical, whether you have a complex, simplified, whatever, depending on how your loyalty program has evolved.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. So there is
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
can't build a simple loyalty program. That's what I feel. Simple, you can build for the customer, but in the back end, you will have to deal with the complexities.
I think that I think in our personal also like a personal view or how we have experienced with a lot of brands is where when you give a lot of, let's say when a customer reaches here, these are the milestones, this is what he gets. If he doesn't, what happens? But oftentimes the not brands get overwhelmed. They kind of think, oh my God, this is extremely intense, and the customer might not get it. That's where I think we have to come in and say, hey, listen, it is complex at the back end. This is always going to be the case. But how we communicate to the customer and how simple we put it to the customer is all the magic of loyalty program is all about. So that's where I think before we even get there, the basic question we ask every brand or they want to ask themselves is how and why and how do I need a loyalty program? Like what makes me eligible to have a loyalty program? In your opinion, how can I assess as a brand whether a loyalty program is the go-to strategy or not?
See, I think having a loyalty program also costs, right? So for you to understand that, okay, you know that you're an established brand, you have spent a couple of years in the market and you have some customers who are loyal, then that is when you need to take a call saying that, okay, I'm a well-established brand, I have some XYZ market share. And for me to scale up further and ensure that I have more repeat customers, I will have to build a loyalty program. So why do we, most of them collect mobile numbers, or in Western markets, they collect an email ID. It's a simple identifier, right? Through this identifier, I'm able to capture what is the social media behavior, how is the customer behaving across outside in the market, etc. Right? So I think for a smaller brand, you can evaluate an end-to-end solution provider who can give you entire, your loyalty engine, points, manages everything, who gives you end-to-end services. But if you're a bigger brand, then you know that there is an intellectual property that you need to build on your own, then build a loyalty system on your own. But these days most of the brands don't do it. Any new emerging brands would rather rely upon existing service provider who are already experts in this space. You don't have to invest so much money in understanding customer behavior. There are already experts there. So if you're a new brand, just go ahead with an end-to-end solution provider. If you're an existing brand who have a very simplified but want to upgrade, then there are partners in the market who are specialists in multiple places, like somebody who can give you a CDP, somebody who can give you a marketing platform. So you will have to invest your amounts accordingly, so that you can reap benefits. So if you're a bigger brand, you certainly need. Smaller brand, go ahead with a ready-made solution.
Absolutely. But I think, is it enough? Like, is it enough? For example, I've launched, so now I know what is my loyalty program all about. I also assessed my data that I've gone through, and I was able to build a customer engagement funnel and figure out how do I talk to them at every stage. But the problem is it's all on pen and paper or all in a document online before we invest completely into a loyalty program. More often than not, brands are a little hesitant once they make the initial investments into a loyalty program. And to see that there are further investments that's supposed to be made in order to communicate, they kind of take a step back and they question themselves, do I have to do it? So in your opinion, how important it is not just to create a loyalty program, but the aftermath of creating a loyalty program, and how can brands keep up with that kind of communication with the customer?
Yeah, I think the math part is very important, because when you're building a loyalty program, you're not building for short term, right? You're not doing it for a year. Because I know a lot of these new emerging brands who have started certain loyalty programs and have winded and revamped into something else, right? There are people who realize, okay, I don't need a simple one. I only need for my cream of the cream customers. So let me launch only the cream of the cream customers program and sunset another program, right? So what's important is if you're a new age startup where you don't know where you're headed, I don't know how your databases will explode, then just go with the flow. There's no hard and fast rule that, okay, I make a projection. See, like any other financial thing, you will have to build a 2-3 year window at least. You cannot build a loyalty program for a year or so. You build a 2-3 year window, you evaluate it over a year or two, whether it's making sense. If not, what are those benefits you can chuck off? What are the benefits you can add? How can you simplify it, etc. So I think doing the math is very critical, because see, a lot of these brands just start and say, okay, I give 5% cashback for the entire year, not even doing the math. So there are a lot of customers who come and, really explore. I mean, I would like to use the word explore the benefit so much that your P&L completely goes for a toss.
Exactly.
Where your the program becomes a guzzler, right? You would have estimated with some assumptions saying that, my redemptions rate will be, let's say 20%, my breakage will be XYZ. If the assumptions go haywire, then it's time for you to just take a step back and modify the benefits. Or if you're promoting it too much, then take a step back and promote it less. So math is very critical. Otherwise,
yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that, because right now I think brands, for any restaurant, for example, they give away a lot of points. They want to give away their products as a freebie or not. But I think this is where I think we come to the last segment, is how can a brand evaluate? So if we know that at the end of the year, we are hit with the shock of how am I, things are going haywire, I'm just putting in more than what I'm getting through my loyalty program. How can any brand evaluate how good or how effective it's their loyalty program is on their P&L, balance itself?
So there are two ways to look at it. Let's say you have a paid loyalty program. You simply do a math saying that I am giving, let's say, some 7 or 8 benefits, and I know these are the number of, let's say, new enrollments or acquisitions that I will do over a period of time, and this is what I will give away. Right? So you will have to do it in a fairly annualized fashion and evaluate it on a monthly basis. But there are certain inherent benefits. So if the brand is not just looking at, I'm collecting X amount and I want to give benefits which are more or less X or 2X or 3X. But if they are looking at things like every time the customer, so all the benefits are linked to a transaction. So I will give this benefit only when the customer transacts. So let's say I transact, then only I'm giving those benefits. Then you're building it in your margin itself, right? Saying that I am rewarding the customer because the customer is more loyal, and XYZ is a margin that I'm willing to let go. If you build a program which is fairly transaction based, then it will work. But if you are just building by things like, every time a customer comes, I'll give 5% cashback, you will have to build it saying that 5% is a margin that I'm willing to let go. But if you've not put that in place and it's like a points based program and your redemption rates are haywire, I have expected 30%, but it's going at 90%. I think, monthly valuation or a fortnightly valuation is very critical, and then keep tweaking those benefits.
But I think it gets more complex when it comes to, so transactional, or else, let's say in general, if I give away 5% cashback, right? Even if it's transactional, we know exactly what we are willing to let go in order to get. But now comes the challenge where there's non-transactional behavior also that is being rewarded from time to time for giving a feedback or for trying to following us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. Then do you also consider it as part of the monthly evaluation where I go back and every month check, retweak and work on it, or how do we work around non-transactional behavior?
So when we do for non-transactional things like sharing content or, being a promoter, etc. So there are certain inherent benefits which you cannot really put a value to it, right? Like your word of mouth is much stronger, your social media presence is much stronger. Those are things you can't evaluate. You can only have a budget saying that, okay, I'm willing to, let's say, spend 20 lakhs of a month on this activity. And when you're exceeding it by, let's say, 1.2x or 1.3x is when you will have to reduce your spend. So constant evaluation on a monthly manner, have budgets for each of the line items will only help.
Okay. In that case, like if I do all of this and I'm able to see, how do when can my loyalty program see a positive effect according to your understanding over the past past 13 years? What did you see? Like how much time does it take for the brand?
Again, like I say, what is the objective? If, let's say, your objective needs to be very clear. Let's say my objective is to reduce churn, right? Depending on your inputs only, the output will come, right? So let's say my objective is to reduce 2% of churn, right? It will not take, it'll at least take a year or two for you to start seeing results like churn. Or if it's simple thing like, my average bill values needs to go up. That is something where you can run programs and instantly get benefits in 6 months. But none of the loyalty programs work on transaction based thing, but more customer based behavior, like how many times the customer is coming back, how much annual spend, lifetime value, etc. So for any loyalty program, I don't think a 2 to 3 year, anything less than a 2 to 3 year window will justice to evaluate the program. It should be at least a 3 year window, according to me.
Okay. I think that makes sense, right? That allows you, or as a brand, to do your tests, try to understand, work with various customer segments, see what's working, what's not, and you have a better. In that way, I think you also create a very foolproof predictive modeling that will also benefit brands for the coming, let's say, 3 to 4 years at least. Although the behavior.
And if you're planning to launch a loyalty program which is very heavy on your pocket, then I would rather say, test out in markets. Let's say you have pan-India presence and test it out on a city and evaluate for 6 months and then launch it. If it's gonna be heavy on your pocket, but if you have certain data to back up, or you've done some market research and surveys where customers have shown interest, or your competition is already running it, then it's fine to go ahead. But I would say any big loyalty program, you should test it in the market and then only launch it.
That way, and modify things even before we go out live full-fledged. So I think with this, we definitely I think 1 hour just flew by in my time. Totally. And we were just having some great conversation. I think this is how we just enjoy things when they keep flowing in a very good manner, right? But I think we have to address the incoming questions that we have from our audience. So we have one of the customer asking, when do you understand a loyalty program is failing? How do you identify that? Understanding that initial strategies wouldn't work as good as expected, how do you evaluate these are the right offerings for my customer audience?
So I think, again, I will emphasize on the point that you need to be very clear. Most of the loyalty programs are not clear what is the objective. They just launch saying that I want to collect customer data. Most of the loyalty programs start with the basic point that I really want to collect the customer's mobile number and talk to them. If it starts with that, then you cannot evaluate the program. When the program becomes bigger and you clearly need to know what is it that is serving the purpose. Like, is it the retention rates which are improving? Are my transaction values improving? Or am I able to sell more products by cross-selling, upselling? So if you have those 3-4 key objectives, is my average visit value increasing or annual spend increasing? You need to have those 3 or 4 KPIs, and which you need to evaluate on a monthly manner. So depending on the brand that you are, let's say you are a very low purchase cycle brand, then you may have to evaluate on a weekly basis. But let's say something like a retailer, a fashion retailer or telecom or whoever it is, they can evaluate on a monthly basis. Evaluation is very critical for you to figure out whether you're failing or not, and objectives need to be very clear.
But I think, Anusha, I do have a question there for somebody who's a new budding brand, right? They don't have the kind of customer data that they need to launch a loyalty program. So in that case, what is your suggestion? We wouldn't start a loyalty program to collect data, of course, but I think we need to have a certain data in order to do it, right? So in your opinion, how can new brands mitigate this?
No, just be upfront, collect the data. Just tell the customer that you may get offers. Don't tell them that it's a loyalty program. Tell them that as simple as, you give your mobile number, we will share you the updates or offers. Don't call it a loyalty program. Just by sharing updates or offers, don't make you a loyalty program until and unless customer really sees value in it, right? So just be upfront and open, saying that, you will get updates. That's the reason why we are collecting this information.
Yeah, I think once we have enough data and we see the customer behavior pattern, that's when we try to create a loyalty program that makes sense for the customer.
Right? Correct. If you don't have customers, if your acquisition is at 80% and 20% are existing, please don't even launch it. Until and unless the ratio becomes better and you see much more value in treating your existing customers differently, only then you should go ahead
and launch the loyalty program. I kind of see why this definitely makes sense. I think that way it also saves a lot of paid for me to understand the first time buyer behavior, and I'm running behind them to make a second purchase. But rather I try to understand why, what of the customer, and then probably I launch a loyalty program, right? We'll move on to the next question. The question says, as we see a lot of case studies across on loyalty programs, that though it drives results, there is a huge amount of points being accumulated by customers and not being redeemed. How do you see that from a financial aspect? How do you assess an ROI of a loyalty program in that manner? Yeah.
So it's a tricky thing. So when you look at it, the financial angle, if your points are not being utilized, the finance team will be extremely happy, because you have assumed, let's say 3% is the amount that I spend for a customer to come back, and it's only trending at 1%. Wow, such a brilliant program. But if you look at from a marketer or a loyalty specialist, the program is just not working out, right? You have assumed for 3% and 1%, which means the customer is just not valuing your program, or you've created enough barriers for the customer to even redeem, right? So I think having a good mix is important, having the finance angle and having the angle where your loyalty is measured by the redemption rate. See, if you have 100% redemption rate, then account for it, saying that, okay, I'm going to give the points, but I'll ensure the points are used by the customers and it's accounted for, it's budgeted for. That's the best program anybody can have. 100% redemption rates, or if not 80% redemption rates, and accounted for. But if you have not accounted for, you've accounted for 35%, heading at 80%, the program will be a failure, or the other way around also.
So what is the realistic number that we can expect then? So what is, at least for a retail industry?
I think for a retail industry, anywhere between 35 to 50% is a good place to be in.
Okay, that's great. That's actually a good number. I think that also tells, it's like we let the finance guys be happy. We also are as marketers.
Yeah. So I think just account for it. If you account for it, the finance team will be happy. Otherwise, if you account for 20%, they'll still not be happy, right? Even if you are at 35%.
Yeah, I absolutely agree on that. So I think we have another. We'll take a final question. I think we're already beyond our time for the day, but I'm really enjoying this. I want to keep it going. The question says customer invasiveness or customer invasion versus customer delight. Although every brand, every customer gives their mobile number or his or her name, that means they're showing willingness or consent to be contacted, right? But how do you define how much is enough? Like, how do you identify? So I can add on to this, which says you send them the offers. Most of the customers don't respond to your text messages or your emails or other form of communication. What is the industry standard A for that question? And also, how much is enough, in your opinion?
So I think, see, for example, I'm a brand who's communicating to the customer and doing value addition. As simple as, like, let's just take an example of an e-commerce platform. Because they track my history of my purchases and my pattern, and they are recommending products, which makes sense to me. It's a value addition that they're doing. I don't have to browse through a lot of clutter. And let's say I always buy, let's say I'm buying on Amazon Pantry, and I always end up buying a washing powder, which I missed this time. And at the end of my journey, I'm being prompted saying that you usually buy this, but this time you've missed. That's a great thing, right? So any information which will do value addition to the customer, either in terms of making it convenient or giving a value addition, saying that, this is a 5% coupon additionally for you. Wow, I've already made the purchase decision and I'm getting an extra benefit. That's a delight.
Yeah.
When does it become an invasion is I keep on pestering the customer that there's sale, there is sale, there is sale. This is a 5%. Please come to our store. Please come to our store. This is I wouldn't say invasion, but it's a bit of irritability, right?
They also add Zenith to the mix.
Yeah, add Zenith to it. You don't even know me and you're telling me come 5%, I'll give you 5% is on us. I really don't want to talk to the brand, right? I repent saying that, why did I even share this information? Another invasion point is, let's say I've given consent to that brand, but the brand is using that information in order to sell to somebody else. That is absolute no-no for me as a customer, right? I would like to be pitched by that brand because I adore that brand, not because you feel some other brand is relevant to me and you're selling that information. That is customer invasion.
But
So
would the customer know in that way, if at all my information is being sold to a third party, how as a customer would I be able to?
see, it depends. So if you really feel the brand, the brand is a complementary brand and it is adding a lot of value to you, makes sense. For example, you know, a lot of these brands, let's say, approach us saying that, you know, I really want to target this kind of a customer. Until and unless we see sense in it and we see that there is value addition to the customer, we do not really go ahead and accept, right? We also don't go ahead and sell information like that. But if brands do that, saying that, oh, I'm gonna get XYZ revenue because this brand is giving me X money to communicate to this customer. Now that is invasion. That there is a thin line there, right? Where you feel this brand is relevant to the customer, or you feel that, you know, the monies are relevant to you. So that's a very thin line that marketers should really take care of.
Yeah, I think we've moved on from the generation where we were all about this is sale, you should buy, we know you like it, just stuff it down the throat. Now we move to mass, and then mass to one, and now one-to-one. So I think it's more importance of how we communicate. I think just a very 1-2 words of difference and the customer can get ticked off quite easily, and there's no returning back, right? And I've personally had such experiences where I was promised something, not delivered wrong, again promised something wrong, given all sorts of wrong communications, and that's it. Like I didn't think a brand like that would do it, and then I was very spiteful. I said, I'll talk about this. I don't know where to vent my anger because nobody from the brand is listening to my invasion. Maybe the customers online on the social media will. So that way, it's customers actually can make or break a brand in that manner for sure. Yeah. So I think this is where I will definitely have to say this is one of the most enjoyable webinars that I've done so far, and it's sad that we have to end our time with this in this beautiful conversation. I hope you had fun today, Anusha.
Yeah, I really had fun, Mitra. In fact, it's a very interesting conversation, right? These are simple things that we do day in, day out, but you get the opportunity to speak about them, and you know there are a lot of people who are like-minded who would like to know about these things. It's good. I really had fun as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for making me part of this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an honor for us. I also have to say, but I think I'm really excited for what Lifestyle has in store for all the customers in the future. I'm actually excited to be part of the community, and Hyderabad, like where I come from, Lifestyle is dearly accepted, and we adore the kind of brands that Lifestyle has to offer us. So I wish you and Lifestyle a very, very best of luck for the future and what lies ahead in 2021. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mitra. Wish you the same.
Yeah, thank you so much. So here, I think we end our webinar officially for today, and we really like to thank all our audience who have been part of the webinar, asked their crazy and wonderful questions for Anusha to answer, and for us to explore the world of winning the customer for lifetime. So this is Frugal for Growth, and this is the webinar series that we've launched to ensure that marketers, your loyalty experts, customer experience managers have the best tools at hand given by the best in the industry in order to make sure that their business growth is exponential and tremendous. So in case any of the participants have more questions with regards to the topic, feel free to write to us at sales@frugal.ai. And in case you have any experience with regards to the webinar, you can also share the same, and any feedback is also welcome. We are extensively ensuring to build this kind of data about customer loyalty, how to engage your customer and retain them for life, seamlessly through our blogs, case studies, webinars, and white papers and articles. So do stay tuned on our social pages in order to get such exciting updates. Thank you so much, Anusha, and thank you everybody for joining us for this webinar today. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anusha. Have a nice day.
See you, Mitra. Bye.
Bye.